Hey there, Social Studies 20-2, taking a look at Source 3. Our theme of the week has been ethnocentrism. Photograph, 1930s Germany. Give you a few seconds to study it, then we'll talk about it. All right, so this one we do have a caption at the bottom. Members of the Hitler Jugend, Hitler Youth, salute Adolf Hitler in 1930s Germany. So as you know, that is Adolf Hitler there. Here are the Hitler Youth, the kids over on the side. You do need to point out that they are saluting the Sig Heil salute to Adolf Hitler. Uh, and that's the bulk of the evidence that we have in the picture. There's not a whole lot to decipher in the picture. But I think what's important now is we talk about why those kids are doing what they're doing and what it stands for. The Hitler Youth I talked about it in the Rise of the Nazis lecture. The Hitler Youth was a youth movement in Germany. Basically, kids joined the Nazi Party, and they 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 weren't soldiers, but they were part of a national youth movement that was Nazi in nature, that was given propaganda, was indoctrinated into the Nazi ideology. So what you're looking at and what you need to point out is propaganda leading to indoctrination, in that these kids weren't born with the desire or the will to salute Adolf Hitler and practice Nazism, but rather they were educated to do those things. So kids were the target of propaganda because it's easier to indoctrinate or change a kid than it is to an adult. I mean, adults are older, they're set in their ways, they've got a bit more wisdom, they're not as easily coerced or manipulated. So, by and large, kids were the target of Nazi indoctrination. So, whenever they taught about German superiority, ethnocentrism, the great Aryan race, the target of all of that would have been kids. They're always the target of propaganda leading to indoctrination. And these kids have clearly been indoctrinated as part of the Hitler Youth. Um, they probably don't realize what they're saluting or what Nazism even really stands for, but they know that they're supposed to do it, and they're doing it, unquestioningly. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're showing their pride in the Nazi Party and Adolf Hitler. So this is a good example of propaganda leading to indoctrination. Um, let's take a look at our templates. Source number 3, theme of the week is ethnocentrism. Date, place, well, 1930s Germany. Participants, the Hitler Youth or kids, and Adolf Hitler, and what might also appear to be Nazi high-ranking officials. You could maybe point them out too as your participants. Ah, don't want that. Pardon me. Historical, or sorry, evidence is going to be, I think, just the fact that the kids are saluting, they're doing the Sig Heil salute to Adolf Hitler is probably all the evidence you can really talk about. Maybe the fact that the caption says they are the Hitler Youth, you could allude to that too. Connecting to nationalism, well, for sure I see ethnocentrism because that is part of the Nazi propaganda package, German superiority, which will lead later on to the final solution, the Holocaust ethnic cleansing. Clearly, this is the product of indoctrination, and this is all evidence of ultranationalism in 1930s Nazi Germany. Historical case study, the Hitler Youth Group, the Hitler Jugend, are the historical case study. They are a group from history that is historically accurate. You could simply just allude to them. You might also talk about the things the Nazis might have taught them, German superiority, the Aryan race, and things like that. And then finally, perspectives. Down there, you're going to fill in, what are those kids, what might those kids be thinking? What would be going through their head as they salute the national hero of Germany, Adolf Hitler? They're probably uh, don't understand what's going on and why he's even there, but they know that they're supposed to salute, and that is indoctrination. What would Hitler be thinking? Well, he's probably thinking, I've molded these kids so far. What else can I do with them? How can these kids serve me? How can they serve my self interest? How can they serve nationalism in Germany? One day they're going to have to fight and die for me. And those kids might think much the same. The kids might be thinking, how can I serve the Fuhrer? The kids are probably thinking, I'm ready to die for Germany. You could probably go that far with it. Next thing we do is we establish our position. So as you know, as we interpret three sources, at the end we need to figure out a position and explain and defend it. So we'll quickly take a look at the three sources again to refresh our memories. There's source one from Tuesday, Emperor Hirohito of Japan reviewing his army. Source number two was soldiers on parade at the Nuremberg rally in 1937. And then this was just today's source, the Hitler Jugend. So we need to take and defend a position. So based on what you see, what do you think the role of nationalism in society should be? How could you justify nationalism in society? So step number one is you need to do some brainstorming. What do those photos stand for? To me, they're showing ethnocentrism. They're demonstrating superiority. And in each of these cases, those feelings of superiority will lead to expansionist policies, conflict, World War II, and ethnic cleansings, mass murder. So when I look at those three sources, my position is that the role of nationalism should be kept to a moderate level, kept to a reasonable level or degree, so that it doesn't turn into ultra nationalism. Because those three photos we looked at are ultra nationalism in action. And we know what that led to: conflict, war, expansionism, and even genocide. So my opinion, my position is, um, we need to be careful. We need to practice nationalism, but only to a moderate degree. Because if we let it go too far, we get ultranationalism and all of the bad things that go with it. So when I type in my position, I'm just going to put something as simple as uh, nationalism should play a moderate role in society. We shouldn't take nationalism too far in society. Either of those could be my position, sentences, or statements. Evidence that I'm going to use, well, I'm going to talk about how, um, in source one, I'm going to talk about how, feelings of Japanese ethnocentrism, Japanese superiority will lead to the Great East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, which basically means Japanese expansionism. I'm going to say that this will lead to Japanese expansionist policies. It will bring them into World War II, and Japan will be devastated at the end of World War II. Don't forget that to defeat them, the Americans firebombed several Japanese cities. They dropped two nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and Japan had to unconditionally surrender in World War II. That is solid evidence that supports my opinion. If Japan hadn't practiced nationalism to such a high degree, making it ultranationalism, they may not have had to contend with World War II and eventually defeated in World War II. You could talk about that. Other evidence that I could use would be, look what happened in Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany took nationalism too far. It turned into ultranationalism. They resorted to expansionism, Lebensraum. That drew them into World War II, and they also lost World War II catastrophically. I could talk about that as evidence to defend my position. Finally, the third photograph, I could say, look, while Nazi Germany practiced ultranationalism and that drew them into World War II, it also led to feelings of ethnocentrism, which would culminate with the Holocaust or the final solution, in which they tried to exterminate the Jews in Europe. I could talk about that as evidence in support of my position, which, to get back to, is that nations need to be careful how far they take nationalism in their society. If they take it too far, it leads to expansionism, war, and even genocide.